جزى الله أصحاب النبي.
miracle mubarak imari kungole kedi mi bam foy chokole kedi mi wala ntuma e bata ko soro futu wala karola wala ntuma kono de mi bambalo wala katuta mari la sibo kalanta way ko wala keba imari mo molti mi yana ko setano wala be muta wala ke muta ta miracle mubarak men frale bundum pitiki yasin ani frale je dro ni ala yede may ni la sasa nyim fambe tarala pundi mi bambalo wala katuta mari la ba wala foy mari mo molti mi yana ko fa e kasila ngola soto ba imari mo molti mi yana ko fang be kabbata ko soto futu wala karola bang wala ntuma mari mo moldi mi yalan ko yela selo wala ke mo taban ta miracle mubarak mi yalan ko fam borol kendema mi yalan ko be mo fen sila mo fen borol de anon kila sallallahu alaihi wasallam jara lol be laari wala silo ka fura miracle mubarak men fura le bundum biti kiasan wala e nomba ko mande 718 4446 718 4446 718 4446 o nomba ko mande alkured al mubarak ni nenna tan ka jamaada han
خلافة عباس ودين نبينا.
To the sovereign Gambia. And when we met, we observed the clarion call that DOI is to restructure for system change and smart government in preparation for the final battle against ignorance and poverty. Ignorance, as far as we're concerned, must be contextualized. To be a sovereign republic, we have to have a sovereign people. And to be a sovereign people, we must acknowledge that power belongs to each sovereign citizen. Power belongs to each sovereign citizen, and collectively, we are the owners of power that determines our manner of government. That is a lesson that we want every Gambian to take note. That in you, power lies. And it must be discharged by entrusting that authority to your fellow citizen who is equal in power, irrespective of our ethno-linguistic origins, gender, and any other sectoral difference. And by virtue of that, we are still ignorant if we do not acknowledge that we are a citizen of a republic where all of us are equal in sovereignty, and none of us should divide us on the basis of our religions, ethno-linguistic groups, or any other consideration. As long as we do not acknowledge that, we are still ignorant. And as long as we don't acknowledge that, Gambia will never be united. And as long as we don't acknowledge, Gambia will never develop. That is the foundation of this party. And that is the foundation we celebrated on the 24th of April, 2021. All members of the Central Committee were reminded that we held a Congress to prepare the ground for DOI to achieve the aim for which it was established. First and foremost, to ensure that every sovereign Gambian realizes his or her authority to determine the existence of this land. And by that awareness, we move to the second stage. We are empowered to eradicate poverty so that we can live in prosperity. That was the clarion call we adopted and committed ourselves to implement until the last days of our lives. The agenda of the Central Committee constituted 11 elements. The first element was to help the members of the Central Committee to understand the rule of law by referring them to the Doi Constitution, how it progressed from the building of a Congress to the building of a Central Committee, and show them how responsibility is transferred from a body that meets every 2 years to a body that meets semi-annually. We will see how that progresses to the bureaus that meet every day to carry out the decisions of the Central Committee. It was clear to them that the Congress was the supreme organ of the party that follows the General Assembly of Members, which meet only if we wish to dissolve the party or change its principles. That therefore, this organ, which is the supreme organ, let's call it second highest supreme organ of the party, meets to elect representatives and to chart the basis of the internal and external policies of the party. Elect its representatives. Having done that, it passes on the baton to the Central Committee to look at the resolutions passed and work out the agenda for their implementation. The Central Committee, therefore, understood its responsibility that it needed to review what the Congress left undone and come up with resolutions in order to implement them. The first task was to prepare the Central Committee members for responsibility. It therefore introduced the signing of what we call the Solemn Declaration by CC and SADO CC members of office. The declaration reads, having been elected to the post, and you mentioned the post, according to the constitution of the party, do voluntarily affirm that I do subscribe to and undertake to uphold all those principles and code of conduct of the party, and will discharge my functions honestly and with utmost sincerity to ensure that I contribute my quota to the best of my ability in transforming the Gambia into a land of liberty, dignity, and prosperity for all, and free it from ignorance and poverty. I promise that I will never succumb to any undue influence and would not accept any gift or donation in kind or cash without the knowledge and authorization of the Central Committee and on its behalf. I solemnly declare that I will not subdue to privilege, patronage, or intimidation, and will instead ensure that I will never resign. I will resign from the party before going to support any other party in good faith. I pledge my honor as surety to ensure the realization of the Solemn Declaration. All the members of the Central Committee and the shadow members of the Central Committee had to read this Solemn Declaration, affirm their commitment to it, and sign the declaration, and it is now kept in the archives of the Central Committee for eternity. After signing the Solemn Declaration, a copy of which will be given to you so that you will be able to quote it exactly as it is in the text, we hope to begin the process of showing what accountable representation truly means. We move to the second agenda, where the Central Committee received a report from Dr. Adam Abba, the authority selected by the KM to preside over the 2021 DOI Congress. Wherever we hold a Congress, the members within that region will select one person to preside over the Congress. And we receive a letter which indicates that there was a dispute on the status of two people, Ms. Aminata Korea and Mr. Kemeseng Sane. And in his letter, he indicated that he addressed a letter to them, and on the 10th of March, he received a letter from Ms. Aminata Korea, and on the 24th of March from Mr. Kemeseng Sane. He attached copies of the letters that were sent by the two persons. And for Ms. Aminata Korea, she indicated very clearly that she was an invitee and was elected without her own involvement, and it was not for her to accept or reject anything that was done in that Congress, but had already indicated that, having been informed of the rules of play, does acknowledge them and rescinded the position for which she was elected. She also affirmed that her commitment to continue to support the party. Mr. Kemeseng Jammeh indicated, Mr. Kemeseng Sane indicated very clearly that he was also there as part of the DOI Media Committee, and therefore the rules of procedure having been explained to him, he also accepted willingly the actual decision that would follow the observations that was made. The members saw no controversy in the letters addressed to the two persons, saw no controversy in the responses, and therefore acknowledged the position of the authority presiding over the elections and adopted the position that was mentioned. And in that sense, the two positions became vacant and needed to be filled. The Central Committee, having considered these decisions made, moved further to deal with the filling of the vacant posts that existed. The Central Committee guided itself with its own constitutional provisions. Article 22 does state under paragraph D, that the Central Committee appoints persons from within its ranks in the Central Committee as a result of death, infirmity, or resignation, provided that a majority of 2/3 of members selected by the Congress are not affected. The position of the DOI Constitution is that you cannot impose representation into the Central Committee. But if a position remains vacant, you can actually appoint someone within the Central Committee to oversee the particular position. But in this respect, the condition is in case of death, infirmity, or resignation. Since these cases were not about resignation, death, or infirmity, the Central Committee therefore resolved that the positions will be left vacant pending the next Congress. But prior to that, since the Central Committee has power to establish committees under it, ad hoc committee will be established to continue to run the affairs of the Bureau pending any constitutional amendment or election by the next Congress. The Central Committee went further to deal with the issue of the resolutions that we pass at the Congress. We agreed that the resolutions at the Congress must be implemented by the Central Committee. And we did come up with resolutions to implement the resolutions of the Congress, and that will be indicated before we conclude. Two crucial items also came before the Central Committee. One was the restructuring of the party to prepare it for smart governance and for system change. The Congress did review the current structures of the party and came to the decision that the Central Committee will begin forthwith to build the structures at the regional level, to link those structures to the headquarters so that all those structures begin to synergize to ensure effective administration and management of the affairs of the party. It also sees the need that in all the structures, all the bureaus will be represented. The women, the youth, the organizing, the political bureau, information bureau, bureau for foreign affairs. All these bureaus will be replicated, and the secretaries will coordinate with the regional bodies so that each bureau functions according to its mandate. The Central Committee further reviewed the issue of electoral campaign. Having selected the presidential candidate of the party, the members saw the need to establish an independent administrative and operational structure for the campaign that is just about to unfold. The Central Committee did review past experiences and saw the impact of those past experiences. It has participated in 2016 coalition building. We started on the 30th of October to select its candidate. From 30th October to 2nd December, the most significant change in Gambian history occurred in 1 month and 2 days. What was responsible for it is because of this centralized mobilization of the people rather than a bureaucratic centralization of a campaign structure. So now the bureaus have been charged to come together and establish for the party a decentralized campaign structure which will not be obstructed in any way in its movement and will not build any bureaucratic structure where anybody rules as a governor in order to facilitate campaigns, which we have seen in the past, which has stalled campaigns in the past because of the idiosyncrasies of leadership. The party sees the need to introduce a completely different campaign strategy and structure to challenge the next phase of the struggle for change. The Central Committee then proceeded to look at the funds that were utilized for the Congress and explain how they were utilized. All those who contributed to it will ultimately have, after the audited accounts, copies to see the decentralized administrative and operational structure that was established to hold the 9th Congress of the party. The members of the Central Committee were charged with different responsibilities of just oversight, and individuals outside the Central Committee took responsibility for food, for accommodation, for transportation, for media. All areas were handled by different individuals, and an accountability system established based on competence, where funds were authorized to be spent according to the budgets that were prepared. So this matching of expenditure and income based on what is prescribed by authorities outside of the Central Committee created a basis of accountability and that the party will continue to consolidate, because everybody became involved in the process, and as a result, the result became what it was. So those who claim that DOI is a centralized organ where a particular individual decides everything will now be disappointed by the facts on the ground. And the Central Committee members were well informed, and some of the lessons they were learning about the finances were not only new to them, but new to the Secretary General and the chair of the Central Committee. So in that regard, we are convinced that DOI has built the architecture for a party of the future, a party owned by its members, a party owned by the people. We concluded the Central Committee meeting by adopting resolutions which ultimately will have to be vetted again by sending it to the members of the Central Committee after the clerical staff finishes with its editing, so that they will endorse. And once that is done, we will give it to each media house for publication as adopted. But what is important is to give you background information on some of the issues that we have finally raised for the members to bear in mind as we proceed to inform the media so that they can inform the nation on the resolutions. We adopted 7 resolutions. Number 1, we agreed that the Central Committee will mobilize human, financial, and material resources to implement the resolutions of the Congress. Number 2, it was also very clear that since certain individuals were deemed to have rescinded the positions that they took by virtue of the information they received from the authorizing authority, we also adopted that decision as part of our resolution. We move to look at the issue of the vacancies and adopted a resolution to ensure that we constitute the ad hoc committees to carry out those responsibilities. We've also seen the vacancy in terms of what we could do under Article 22 of our Constitution and a series of other articles. We therefore adopted the resolution for constitutional review. And there is no doubt that by Saturday, the bureaus will meet, the secretaries of the bureaus will meet to constitute a task force that would establish a constitutional review committee to review the constitution of the party and update it wherever it becomes necessary. We've also resolved that the Central Committee prepares the ground for the strengthening of all the bureaus regionally. So it means that the Youth Bureau, the Women's Bureau, all the bureaus will now have representation, a male and female, from all. You have 7 regions, we have 8 regions. We have CRR North and CRR South, as far as our party is concerned, and we have bureaus on both sides of the bank because of the isolation of the regions. So in that sense, all the bureaus will be replicated, male and female, in all the regions. The Central Committee also promised that it will prepare the ground for a new tactic in terms of mobilization in the presidential elections. The members concluded by looking at portions of the transformative agenda. Why? Because the party, by virtue of time, was unable to launch its transformative agenda on the 7th of March 2021. To launch the transformative agenda, it is agreed by the Central Committee that we will select another important day, but this day will be a day for Africa, because this party is a party that aims for the unification of the continent. It is a party that intends to maintain the heritage that Lumumba, that Nkrumah, that Cabral had bequeathed to us. That it is our duty to defend the sovereignty of the African continent and forever liberate our people from the sufferings they've been trapped for centuries, to a point that they are classified among the wretched of the earth. That this party will not allow that to continue as long as we exist on this earth. Day and night, will make the commitment to fight that battle against ignorance and against poverty until we have a land of free persons and a land of prosperous human beings. That therefore we intend to launch the manifesto on the 25th of May, African Liberation Day, where we'll mobilize all those who can, respecting everything that will save the health of the population, so that in all the languages, what DOI intends to do will be clear at all. We did go into some of the elements and show what we intend to do in the villages, in the country, if we were to assume responsibility. And this is given to our members so that they can continue to propagate the ideas, so that we have one vision and one mission. Many of this will come. And if you allow me, if you wish, members of the press, to share it with you, I will do so. If you believe that this is enough, then I can summarize. And then we can hold another press conference afterwards to deal with some of the elements of the transformative agenda. It is left to you. And I will not force that on your throat, but I will just give you an appetizer. We told the Central Committee that the debt burden of this country is $77.4 billion, meaning that even the newly born child carries a debt burden of $38,000. A newly born Gambian child carries the burden of $38,000. How are we going to solve that problem? We are saying that we will create a cooperative bank out of the sovereign wealth of the land that will be able to purchase the fishing trawlers, that will plow our waters and ensure that we put more wealth in our coffers and earn more foreign exchange. We'll engage in import substitution. We have indicated very clearly that we spend $4 billion in terms of importation of rice, when we have all the land to be able to cultivate, lacking only the resources to be able to do that. When we have money in our coffers, which we can send back to the farming community and give them the fertilizer, the seeds and farming implements they need, and produce abundant rice, and therefore leave $4 billion in our hands rather than leaving the country in terms of foreign exchange. That is what you call import substitution. We have emphasized the need to be able to do the processing of all those crops that we are producing. To give you maybe another appetizer, look at the tourism sector. Almost 300,000 tourists are capable of coming to the Gambia. They will say 280 something, but 3,000 tourists realistically could be mobilized to come to the Gambia. We are saying that we will have a program where each tourist, before you leave your land, will tell you about the poverty of our people. Those people who are going to go there to sell the country will not only be selling sand, beach, and sun. They will be selling humanity. They will be telling those people what they can add to our country that is of value. that at least if they spend even $100 or euro, that goes to our people. How? We'll get our people to start making cloth, to start making pottery, to start making all those things that constitute our national heritage. And the cooperative bank will sponsor them to produce that in accordance with what is expected of the tourists that are coming, so that there will not be a vacuum in marketing their products. Everything will be tied and linked to the strategy of promoting tourism in the country. And if we do that, we have calculated 1.5 billion that will go into the hands of our people on an annual basis. Development is about knowledge. It's a science. It's not about imitation. It's about study. It's not ready-made. You have to look at all the potentials of a country and craft it on the basis of what is scientifically possible. Then you achieve your goal. Another appetizer. Somebody asks, how do we end corruption? I want to be an investor in the Gambia. How do we end corruption? We say, don't come to exploit, come to share. Establish a company and then allow the workers to buy shares. The money that Social Security is taking and put in Social Security, percentage of the worker's salary, why could sums like that not be accumulated and invested in the company so that the workers will own more and more shares, 10%, 15%, 20%, and then when it comes to the dividend, at the end of each year, they will get dividend that will enhance their prosperity and eradicate their poverty. This is what Doi is saying. This is what the transformative agenda is to bring to the Gambian people to eradicate their poverty. We can. We have all the resources. We have the knowledge. We have the capacity. But we have lacked the resolution to make the decision that will empower those people with the authority to be able to decide and manage our affairs. That has been the problem of Gambia. That has been the problem of Africa. So in that regard, the Central Committee left this room inspired that there is more information to be gathered, more knowledge to be sought, ignorance to be fought, policies to be established and implemented, and a society to be transformed, a system to be changed, a system to be changed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khalifa. Now, I open the floor for questions. And you introduce yourself and the media house you are representing. Any questions?
And those media houses who would wish the local languages will do so. Those who do not want to cover local languages, we will excuse you after you ask your questions.
Questions can be asked not only by journalists, by anybody who has a question to ask. Anybody, for that matter.
Your agenda sounds very big, but you have been in politics for 2 to 3 decades now, and you have been propagating your message to the government people, and still now they can't absorb your message. What do you think is responsible for that?
Well, thank you very much. I don't know how you came to that conclusion that they are not accepting the message. What I know is that I was a presidential candidate in 2016, and when I invited the presidential candidates, 5 of them, to Kairaba, so that we can build a coalition and allow one of us to be the candidate, I know that eventually people came. And now, after that, it came to a situation where we prepared the ground to select a candidate, and I believe that we did succeed in selecting a candidate, and I believe that we did campaign, and I am sure those who followed our campaign would hear my voice, and I believe that the type of campaign we thought was acceptable to the Gambian people was actually the type of campaign which occurred. And I remember the president then saying, and I don't want anybody to think that we are caricaturing him in any way, but that I have people around me and I'm not afraid about anything. And obviously, we were among those. And what we said appeared to have been very, very much agreeable to the Gambian population and very much understood by them. And I believe that that method of campaign has never happened in this country with any other party other than DOI. A very peaceful campaign, message-driven campaign, insult-free campaign, anger-free campaign, until the end that we could mobilize the whole Gambian population, one Gambia, one nation, one people, and the whole country became inspired. That's how we won 2016. How can you separate DOI from that? And say that your message is not being heard. Who made it possible to change the country in 2016? We achieve and you deprive us of our achievement. You don't want to see our achievement. You don't want to hear our achievement. That is the problem of the country. It's not that DOI has not had impact, but people refuse to recognize the impact and give the impression that DOI has not been having impact. But when they need something, they come to us so that they achieve it. Yet they say nobody listens to us. Obviously, there was an impasse in this country. They say people don't listen to us. They don't listen to us. I'm sure that people listen to us. I am sure that people have been listening to us. But after listening to us, until power is transferred, they don't want to hear us anymore. Nobody hears them. Nobody listens to them. That is a message of convenience, not a message of truth. That's my position, and you have your position. But we are convinced that time will prove that wrong. There is no single person in this country, 48% of them, who live on less than $75 a day, that those people are listening to us. They will want the poverty of the people to be put to an end. This party that is saying that you have to have 12 years of education, free education. This party that is saying if this government can have 845 million taken from national coffers to buy sugar, to buy rice, to buy oil, to give it to the poor. This party is saying that that government has the financial wherewithal to give free breakfast and free lunch to every Gambian child. And the parent would not need 845 million to get rice, a bag of rice and sugar. That's what we are saying. This is a party that intends to give free education and free breakfast and lunch to every Gambian child in school. This is a party that is saying that it will accompany the young people in this country rather than the failed promises of 56 years, that the promises will be fulfilled, where every young person that comes out of school will go into national service. And that national service, you choose where you're going to get your training, and government at least will give you the food that you need and the allowance to buy what your essentials are, so that you prepare yourself for work. We'll prepare a nation, we'll build a nation. If you wish, you go to the security forces after being trained, and we'll transform our security forces into working forces, so that they will build the bridges, they will build the wharves, they will build the buildings, they will build the roads, so that we create a whole army of producers and workers. That's what we intend to do in this land. You say people will not listen to us. They will not listen to us. Time will tell. Time will tell.
Yes, that's it. Two questions are here.
Yeah?
My name is Ibrahim. I work for King and Radio. Honorable Shala, you did so. Yeah, I was saying my name is Ibrahim. I work for King and Radio. You did talk about a staggering amount of the budget on the country. When PDOIS, commonly called DOI, if you are elected into office, how did you plan to retire these debts? That is my first question. And my second question, in your Solemn Declaration, you made emphasis on the issue of gift. Why is DOI so much particular about gift? As in the Gambia, people give out most of these gifts for the purpose of perhaps out of generosity or love. Why is the party so much concerned about gifts?
Well, number one, in terms of debts, you always have to deal with your debtors and creditors. If they owe you, you will deal with them. If you owe them, you deal with them. So in essence, we have to do that assessment and negotiate what you can get rid of through negotiation and what ought to be paid, and you schedule the payment. We are saying that we are going to engage in import substitution in order to ensure that we earn the foreign exchange to be able to feed ourselves, clothe ourselves, house ourselves, to be able to give prosperity to our nation. We know we can do that. The debts generally had been relied on for infrastructural development. So we will make sure that we handle that aspect by creating sovereign national wealth in order to invest in infrastructural development and take that only if it is necessary and if it can be paid. We are also going to ensure that through import substitution, we are providing the means to earn the foreign exchange that should have gone to other countries will remain in our homeland. And we believe that as we move for a period of 5 years, we should be able to be self-sufficient in all the vital needs of the country, and therefore our dependency will be reduced more and more, and we will have the might to be able to resist certain impositions that may come from anybody else. We believe that the world is opening up to smart governments, honest governments, and we believe that we will have many international partners who believe in honest and smart governments. Now, in terms of gifts, you are not putting the question that I can fully comprehend, because you are talking about gifts as citizens, as religious people, as communities, which is a part of our way of life. But I don't think you are talking about somebody who is given a position of responsibility, accepting gifts in order to discharge public service. I don't think that's what you mean. So if that is what you mean, well, obviously I think you know why we should be opposed to that people are rendering service to the population based on what should be done, because it's a duty to be performed, and you've already been given an income to render that service. Now we are saying that DOI is a school of administration. So if we are preparing our people for future government, then we must begin to internalize those values that will ultimately be national values as far as running a government is concerned. That is the answer.
Okay. My name is Lande Sisa from Ketpa. I have two questions. The first one is, I attended the entire Congress of DOI, from the caravan to the Congress day. I want to ask, how did the nomination of Kex and Amina Korea, brings an oversight from the DOI? Because during the Congress, several people were nominated, but immediately were identified as not part of the delegates. So how come Aminata and Kex issue, become a controversy?
Well,
the second question is, many people term DOI as one of the most transparent political parties in the country. It has come to the surprise of people that since the three months after the Congress, that's the time people knew that Kex and Aminata were not part of the Central Committee due to the fact that they were not delegates at the Congress.
Well, thank you very much for your first question. The first question, the answer is simple. DOI has a constitution, and when we hold a Congress, the first action of the Congress is the election of a credential committee. The credential committee would actually prepare the ground for the delegates. You will see that their duty is to examine the credentials of all the delegates. What we had done in the past is to prepare the list of the delegates, prepare their files. As you can see, this is a file from the Congress. We prepare their file with all the documents that are necessary and their badge, so that they will be properly identified and the region from which they hail. I must say that before even the delegates arrived at Kairaba, the enthusiastic supporters had already taken over all the seats. So even the delegates had a problem in finding seats. Since the chair has told you that membership education is an ongoing process, and because of coalition building, DOI had not intensified its membership education to a level where every member knew exactly how congresses are held, why they are held, and how they are constituted. So we understand that. Many people felt that they were a part. They took ownership of the Congress. That's credit. But of course, there is a demerit. that technically, structurally, procedurally, we had quite a lot of challenges to face. That is why you saw the delay. We were in there cracking our heads what to do. Some said, well, why don't we announce that people should be, so we said that will be a chaos. There will be some people who will say, I will not. And what do you do with them? We cannot call the police and say, remove them from the hall. I think that would be a disaster. So clearly we saw that we were left with a problem, and let us just continue with it and see what happens at the end. And what happens at the end is that many people were there, they were enthusiastic, they owned it, they are part of it. Election and this is just a formal process, but they felt a part of the party and felt that, well, they could be anything in the party. We appreciate that enthusiasm. We accept the shortcoming of lack of membership education, and we believe that the lesson that we have gathered is to intensify that membership education, and the Political Bureau, I'm sure, will swiftly begin that process of enlarging the process of membership education and ensuring that our constitution is produced for every member to be able to get a copy of it and know what is happening, and it will be translated, and we will also put it orally so that people will know what is what. I don't know whether I've answered your first element. So therefore, we can say that that was a key problem in terms of people who participated in the whole electoral process. Number two, why did we wait until 24th April to adopt a resolution that we are now conveying to you? Well, that's the rule of law. We came from a Congress that elected a central committee. But the central committee also has regional representation, and they also would have to elect male and female from each region to be members of the central committee. All that is a process. If you come to the Secretary General, as some of you did, and ask me to make a pronouncement, what I told you is 24th April will be able to make a declaration. But smart journalists as you are, and others, you saw our chair, and simply posed questions. The chair knew what the facts were. Nobody felt that this was controversial. Who says that what I have said here is controversial? Nothing is controversial. So it was a feeling that this was not a controversial matter. But ultimately, those people involved that you have mentioned knew. We knew. The authority knew. So this was not secret to any of those involved. But the issue is that the time was not ripe for us to adopt what the authorizing officer has proposed so that it can be formally declared. I would say the constitution of the party is what created the gap, and we could only fill it by what we have done. So we believe that that's how government works. It's not that anything that happens you go and declare. You have to prepare the ground so that procedurally what you do will actually be done in the way that it should be done. And I'm sure today no one will leave this hall and feel that what we have announced is controversial in any way.
Okay, if there's no question, I have a follow-up question. Aminata, you said the committee wrote to Aminata and Kes.
I didn't say a committee wrote.
Okay,
you are a journalist.
No, sorry.
I have said to you, the authority that presided over the elections indicated after the election that he received messages that these people were not delegates. But at the time, he was overwhelmed by the situation that he did not take into consideration because he did not know who to consult, and that was not the time to consult. He was presiding. Would you consult a person, a newly elected Secretary General, a newly elected chair? Who would he consult? He felt that he was in a dilemma. He did not know who to consult to make any confirmation. Therefore, he just left it to flow until after the Congress. Then he will follow it up. So we can understand the sequence.
Okay, to that, on our Facebook page, She wrote that she was disappointed to know that to read from the newspaper that she is not part of the executive.
No. I think what is important for you to note is that she read from somewhere, I would assume, that started attacking her. Some said she defrauded. I don't know. That's how the impression she had. Whether it was somewhere, but the Secretary General received information from the authorizing person saying that some people had called him to say, well, they have seen somewhere a claim that somebody is this position, and those are positions that he had already investigated and he had taken a position. So what should happen? So he was advised that he should talk to those people directly. And the information that we received from him was that, yes, those people talked to them and said that they didn't put it there, others had put it there. So it became a whole situation. So as far as we are concerned, she has every right as a citizen to defend her integrity whenever she feels that that integrity is being attacked. And we are not offended in any way. She can say whatever she wants in defense of her integrity. But we believe that we did consult, and an understanding has been reached that for us it's a process, especially the issue of when to declare. That something that is written, should we not have put this in the public space? But I think, just as you understand it now, we could not do that because of the rule of law. We speak for the Central Committee and not for ourselves. And we had to have a Central Committee meeting to adopt a resolution before we can issue a statement.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
In the languages also. In the languages, if they have questions in the languages.
Well, we'll continue with this.
Well,
Let me ask one question.
you can ask in any language anyway.
No, Babasila again. 2021 is another question we are in our website. We are going to vote December 4th. So is there any possibility for that forming earlier?
Well, what we should take note of is what is essentially the nature of politics in any country. Parties can participate on their own accord. Coalitions can be built. So those are all possibilities in an electoral system. So no political party will ever dismiss that you will not stand alone or you will not build coalitions. But what we have said, and said it very clearly, is that DOI has exhausted that trend of building coalition for regime change. That is history. DOI will never ever again participate in any form of coalition just to change face. DOI will always move towards system change, and we have already articulated that system change. If any party wants to join DOI in that bandwagon for system change, they are welcome. If anybody, any individual is welcome, they are welcome. We are ready to build the largest united front for system change of all human beings. We are not waiting for parties, because parties are microcosm of the population. We are talking about the Gambian population. We are talking about a wave of the people, an alliance of the people. Parties can join in, but the key alliance is the alliance of the Gambian people against ignorance and poverty, an alliance for system change. Well, you are clapping. I hope they will not feel the journalists are clapping for us. If you are members, why don't we just
Questions
I respect
can be
the quorum
asked
so
in
that
any language.
we'll not implicate the journalists here as being voiceable.
Journalists are asking questions in English because they are going to write in English. They cannot write in their own languages. So, but you can ask questions in any language.
Concluding English, then I address them in the local languages.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, so if you say they have no question, then we close.
Well, if you don't have questions, there are people here maybe who would not have followed the intervention in English as they would. So I'll allow Halifa to speak in Wolof, and yeah, and you can do so in Mandinka.
Constitution ko men be barro ke kan saiba ko mi da wala ko constitution ko ni mo abinala la ko nyaadi
mbaja belale lafita nyin ngay angale kango fo jang ni do lafita tala isita chair person ya même fo mbe kumo commencer la na kangot pour mol sa kalamuta même fote jang même fote jang wala mu ñenti ko doy la Central Committee wole benta tilimuang anin nani April Karot pour que Congress hayna ka koma fele pour nga kunung long nga ñaato bayne même photo Congress o Central Committee siita pour ka yinka même mu kesoti je ka ta ka ke tamandir ñaati pour ka patio samba ñaat mune ya kendi bengo keta tilimuang anin nani men keta wo lungole la sanji tan lulu anin killing komanto
Please
1970 24th April mu kulete me ya lonko sañi mobu kafu ning lungo a tambita mo majura mune ya kendi a dalilo jamama kala doy ya jeko lungte lungol kono men kummayata ñing lungoti wole ya kendi Central Committee benta wo lungole la pour mol ya long mune keta e ka bring sita sidebe be mo yele ay même bambande je wala mu ñenti ko bi manke lung kensangot bi mu lung kumalet wala mu 24th April ako tonya tili tan anin sey february karoto wala ka jura bari men keta wolungola amunta ko taman serol mu membe mol parandi kan aboko ye mbiro sotoron ibe dala dun kan pour que pare pour que ñoboroke fam soto taman sero ako wole keta tili tan anin sey february kaw bari même mu toñati maral kamo membe kiri wo wato la banko ala executive mu Angleterre man sole ni na député seat pour que loi dada yemen dada yalo loi ka folo hamole ni hamma kayito dada folo fo ayeta queen la representative member Gambia pour wol ya signer janni avec le loi te ñi maggo yalla woto fan soto man sifo so wala kendi referendum keta fotili moang anin nani april karoto iko sani gambia keta republic wala mu banko men ya lon ko man sa ya burkata je man sate soto la je kote de woto mol membe wo banko ka wolbe maro kala nyaati wole maral kango naati pour ka yitandi ko banku dingol le sembo soto pour ka yitandi jumale nyanta gambia maral adum fanan député bungo wosi tamal serol ke mune même mu hammoti luwato na tambite je abe tala na pression fam fam be yalon ko molle ya tombo pour aya signé janni abe kala luwate nyim banko kan woto wolum lemu lumoti me yalon ko gambi dingol janta jurala an ko bring doy wuluta abe nyin ko mo bambande kan mune ya kende bawo sajji tan lulu anin kilin komanto jong yajulo kuntuta molla sembo wala sawunta ke nyim banko la maral kawati wala ya kende sanji lulu wote wakati ngamen tambindi ya kontibo ni lafita ya bondije wala man long num wala ya kende doy ko katobe kela nga dum coalitional kono kafunyo ya me ya non ko mba kendila fo karta woto molie nyaton ko bondi woto ka nyaton ko sindi woto pour kumo me ya lon ko abena maral kan woto wosi seneya ko karonin lolo adum fanan 2016 ngamira wosi neata ko karonin lolo wada hanika bi mo lafita ka mol filindi wo falingo akumbayata de mo men ka foko falingo man nafaso do ala fita mo sinon ni la wo falingo akumbayata amon futa nyanta futa la dame an korosiro nyanta kala munaya kende amon futa je bari pour ka foko amon kummaya wo falingo le kumbayata hani 18 February 1965 bawo men kita 18 February 1965 amunto ko tamansurolam bari ni mu toñalete ko gambe dingo ye sembo soto pour que nyaton ko syndicat bonde wo koytelew taling te je ko woto wala yakandi doy ko bawo wo sembo wole be gambe dingol bulu an mo kilingte wo sembo tamandi nola wole kafo naati politiko kafo wole ya naati pour nga kambe nga jibe be banko sambala nyame bawo pati damma te banko sambanola falinola wole ya ken ko fo pati yol yo wuli yata ka mol fanan karandi pour mun kamma wole kafu nyoma pour sembo ye soto pour que banko fali woto ning le bo politiko la do koti ka kafolo folo ya fahamuro soto yela banko kan yela banko ding ya suute yalon ko sembo bebul yalon ko ini mo bele kanya ite tara la doya ko ite sonna momo ye wuli santo ite tara duma isalon ko sembo mem babulu wo karta kisingo wole bebul woto ntol bele kanyanta banko ding yala woto banko ding me yalon ko amon wo suute wo manke banko ding woto folo yetta tarale fambulu ya fambunya ya longo ila banku ding ya nyonta an ini mo bele kanyanta wo nyanta sabatila banku dingol bebulu isa longo ila wo banku ding ya amanke santati amanke sota itela tamu iba tankala ite sonna mo ya ta ibul woto 24th April ay wole nyininka wole ya kendi e chairman fo ngawo tanka sani ngalo ayeke na safiroti na hakkilo kono ay taraje nkana film woto congress tambita central committee sita munera kendi ku silo le bala kafo fo ay silo so congress woka si sanji fulo sanji fulal na tambita oto do ko be kala nyaati ni congress sonta ko ñin la ñanta kala adum fanan sanji fula ale abe sila oto abe wo soniyande la no nyaati wala kendi patio ala maral kangoto ay central committee fanan soto wo central committee ado ko mumenti e karworo kasi ko me yalon ko kambingo keta kongre soto ala a ñanta wole tala pour ka tamandi ayeke ayeke na tamanden yaati ayeke na tamanden yaati woto bawa abe kala na tamanden yaati wole ya kendi central committee sita ay congress wala ko be yinka pour kake tamanden yaati bari central committee fanal na botala mune ñanta kala woto bureau sotota bureau men yalon ko lungolum wala ñanta ko wol tamande la woto central committee e même fo e songa e be wole sambala bureau to pour bureau ya tamandi weke na tamande yaati e woto akumma ya tamol ya kala mutako central committee seat aye bunda tan anin kileng le jibe bunda folo aye mol karandi men dunta central committee an imumo kutol tije ke karandi central committee la sembo mumenti pour ya kalamut pour yela doko ke inyanta kala nyaat fulanjang bawo kafo kango ntolbe nyanta na kango timbandila woli ya kendi central committee ko abe ko kutole kala janning mobe ala sirango tala central committee ko aba bambandila abe lahido dilala ko abe kala nyimmo sifati mummo sifa ay men lahidi wala mu ñenti ko ate dey akata hadamadi woti me yalon ko e abe parela même patio la maral kangot même ala tamandir ñaati même ala jikkoti abe parela pour que wo be timmandila a pareta pour que lahido di mo mambulala e pour ka yitandi ko ku men ya lonko aba kendila moye foroyaaje ala dokoto moye toñaaje ala ko dokoto pour gambe ye tañato moye bo bata kono ye dum daha kono moye bo yankankato kono ye dum daha kono moye bo doya kono ye dum buña kono appareta pour que wo doko kela pour que filo bay ka fohari aba abe parela pour ka banan momo ya sang wala momo ya silandi pour ayala toña bula ay ko kota mutam men manke toñaade appareta e hani na sita ayaje ko toña a lafita dunna pati kodento ata wulena doron anin doy la sira ngoyeta ani abe parela pour que resign ka yitendi ko mbota doy sañi asita da woda bari ata wulena doron ko me dunna ñi pati ko mbota doy pour que naaje ata kala wo mo sifati woto jang ako memmu ala insurance pour ka yitandi ko ata jijala ñin ko moto wole mu ala fohariyat ala fohariya abe wole di kanne pour ka yitandi ko ay même fo ata sosola fula njango central committee fanat nata ka jibero ki kayto même bota mo me yalon ko wala mu sirantiyoti ka bring congress be kere ay même fo wolemu kabring abe congress kono mo fula la tommandiro ila kunya a futata bari wotumo atelebe siranti yala aman lafi kamo kotan jibe pour ka nyininka e bawo mo bamutala ko wo babulan ni kan kulela so wolya kendi ayabula wonya doron tommandiro yake bari wo kola asala kiskisuroke ako kabrin tommandiro keta fo congress o janjanta ay letter safele wo mo fulole la pour kalon fo molye même fo wo mu toñale te bang o amanke toñate ako ay jabiro soto wo man kumo soso wo sonto ko wo place o dey buña place o mu e man tara ñini kan e man tara pour ka ku keje wala ku foje me yalo ko ane